The Ultimate Warrior was literally a superhero that jumped out of a comic book. This guy was a champion, an icon, and he exploded onto the wrestling scene like a supernova. We all know the Ultimate Warrior, right? We've seen him win championships and headline WrestleMania in front of 70,000 people. But what if I told you that before all of that, he was a completely different person? This isn't the story you know. Before the WWE, before he was a global superstar, he was just a project for a small wrestling company in Texas. We are diving into the one chapter of his life nobody talks about, where a bodybuilder named Jim Hellwig was completely broken down and then rebuilt. This is the insane story of the Dingo Warrior. You are not going to believe this, but before the face paint and the crazy energy, he was just a bodybuilder. Seriously, this dude, Jim Hellwig, was so jacked, he won the Mr. Georgia bodybuilding title. He wanted to be a chiropractor, not a wrestler. Then, in 1985, a promoter put together a team of bodybuilders to turn them into wrestlers. And on that team was Hellwig and a super quiet guy from California you might have heard of, Steve Borden, aka Sting. The craziest part? Neither of them had any wrestling experience. Zero. They were just two huge dudes who had no idea what they were doing. They were handed over to a veteran trainer, but literally everyone else on the team quit except for Hellwig and Borden. Billed as the Freedom Fighters, they were thrown into their first real test, the super tough Memphis wrestling territory. Imagine being a total rookie and your first job is in a place known for being the most unforgiving place in wrestling. What could possibly go wrong? Everything. So in Memphis, they were a complete disaster. The fans hated them. They were clumsy, they were awkward, and they were honestly dangerous in the ring. Realizing the good guy act wasn't working, they decided to turn them into villains. In late 1985, they showed up with slicked back hair and menacing face paint, a little preview of what was coming, and got a new name, the Blade Runners. Hellwig was Blade Runner Rock, and Borden was Blade Runner Sting. They eventually moved to a promotion called the WWF and got a famous manager, Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert. But a new name didn't fix the huge problem. They were still terrible at wrestling. The Blade Runners were a total flop. And back then, there were no guaranteed contracts. If you didn't make the company money, you were fired. After less than a year, the team was done. In mid-1986, Blade Runner Rock left the company, while Sting stayed and became a legend. For Hellwig, this was a massive failure. He learned a super hard lesson. Being jacked wasn't enough. He needed a character, and he needed a place to actually learn how to wrestle. And he found it in Texas. So in 1986, a totally defeated Jim Hellwig shows up in Dallas, Texas. He gets a job in world-class championship wrestling, a company that was in huge trouble and needed new stars. And get this, some stories say they hired him for as little as $50 a night. Can you even believe that? $50. And this is where everything changes. According to one story, another wrestler said he looked like a warrior. Hellwig heard it, and boom, the Dingo Warrior was born. At first, he was a bad guy, managed by the legendary Gary Hart. He was fighting all the top good guys like Kevin Von Erich and Bruiser Brody. But then, something completely insane started to happen. Even though he was a villain, the fans started cheering for him. They loved his insane energy and power during a feud with another bad guy, Ravishing Rick Rude. Gary Hart saw this happening and made one of the smartest decisions ever. He basically told the guy in charge, "Let's just let this thing happen." They turned him into a good guy. The big moment happened when his own partners turned on him in a match. The crowd went absolutely crazy for him, and in that one moment, a new hero was created. Now that he was a fan favorite, his career exploded. He teamed up with Lance Von Erich, and in late 1986, they won the WCWA World Tag Team Championship. This was his first ever major title. The company knew they had something huge. The Dingo Warrior wasn't just another wrestler, he was a main event. WCCW literally became his personal science lab. He was on TV every single week, wrestling every night, finally getting the practice he desperately needed. It was here, in front of those crazy Texas crowds, that he perfected his entire character. Remember the Blade Runner's face paint? In WCCW, he started experimenting with the insane, colorful war paint that became his signature look. He invented his famous entrance here. He would sprint to the ring and shake the ropes like a maniac, driving the crowd insane. This was the first version of the ritual that millions would later watch. His wrestling style was just pure chaos: clotheslines, gorilla press slams, and huge splashes. He developed an unstoppable aura, doing his famous no-sell, where he'd just shrug off his opponent's moves like they were nothing. This guy was no longer a clumsy bodybuilder. He was learning how to be a main eventer under the guidance of pros like Gary Hart. His rise as a solo star was cemented in early 1987. On February 2, 1987, in Fort Worth, the Dingo Warrior won the prestigious WCWA Texas Heavyweight Championship. He was now a real champion, a proven star, and the biggest wrestling company in the world was watching. In June 1987, the WWF called. Jim Hellwig left Texas and signed with Vince McMahon. At first, he was still wrestling as the Dingo Warrior at smaller shows, and fans who knew him were going crazy. But Vince McMahon knew he needed a name that was bigger, crazier, and something the WWF owned completely. As the story goes, Vince literally said he didn't even know what a dingo was and thought it sounded dumb. He declared that with all the other warriors in wrestling, they didn't need another one. They needed the ultimate one. Warrior remembered it a little differently, saying Vince told him, "We want you to do Warrior, but we don't want Dingo." So, in one of his first interviews, Hellwig himself declared he wasn't just any warrior, he was the ultimate warrior. The change was complete. The Dingo was gone. On October 25, 1987, the Ultimate Warrior debuted on WWF television. They took everything he built in Texas, the entrance, the rope shake, the paint, the power, and put it on a global stage, amplified by the WWF's huge production. To protect him, he wrestled super short matches, just destroying his opponents. And it worked. Less than a year after his TV debut, at the first SummerSlam in 1988, he beat the Honky Tonk Man in literally 30 seconds to become Intercontinental Champion. This was one of the most explosive rookie years in wrestling history, all built on the foundation from Texas. The story of the Dingo Warrior is insane because it shows how important the old wrestling territories were. Back then, this was the only way to create stars. Think about it. Jim Hellwig went into the system as a total failure. The Blade Runners were a joke. That failure was actually the most important thing that happened to him. It forced him to get better or quit wrestling forever. World-class championship wrestling gave him a second chance. It was a place where he could try anything, fail, and try again in front of a live audience every single night. He learned from legendary wrestling minds like Gary Hart and wrestled stars like the Von Erichs and Rick Rude. In today's world, WCCW was basically his NXT. It's where he learned how to connect with fans and build a character that was bigger than life. When Vince McMahon signed him, he wasn't getting some random bodybuilder. He was getting a finished product that was already proven to be a massive star. The Ultimate Warrior wasn't created by the WWE in 1987. He was born in the sweat-soaked arenas of Texas in 1986. The Dingo Warrior days are the secret link between the awkward bodybuilder and the worldwide icon. They prove that before the WWE could have a global phenomenon, he had to become a star in Dallas first. The Ultimate Warrior became one of the biggest stars the world has ever seen. His career peaked when he beat Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania VI, which is just insane to even think about. And while his career got complicated later, you cannot deny that he connected with an entire generation of fans. He made millions of kids always believe. But to really understand how massive he became, you have to look past the giant stadiums and see where he started. In tiny arenas in Texas. You have to see the failure of the Blade Runners to understand the triumph of the Dingo Warrior. This WWE Hall of Famer was not an overnight success. He was the product of a brutal system that doesn't even exist anymore. If you can't believe this piece of wrestling history, smash that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss our next video. And for a future video, let us know in the comments, what is your favorite Ultimate Warrior memory ever? Did any of you actually see the Dingo Warrior back in the day? Thanks for watching.